I don't want to waste any more time. So let's get going. If my face does not look familiar to you, my name is Bailey Ritter. I will go to the next slide. There we go. My name is Bailey Ritter, and I am the Youth Advisor for the Ocean Project. And at the very end, I'll share a little bit about how to get involved with both the Rising Blue Network and sign up for the brand new newsletter, sharing even more opportunities to get involved with youth activism and youth engagement around the world. But also at the very end, I couldn't help but plugging World Ocean Day coming up very soon. It feels like we were just preparing for Earth Day not very long ago. So World Ocean Day, June 8th. You're never going to forget it now after I just said it. So at the very end, I'll share even more ways for you all to get involved planning events. And if there aren't events near you, small ways that you can still take action and celebrate and protect our giant, beautiful blue planet. But I couldn't be more excited to be joined today by the youth ocean advocates from the New York Aquarium. Like I said, I just couldn't be more excited for this really special panel. We were kind of brainstorming last month, I believe, and they all came to me with just so many ideas. I feel like we could have a series with the YOAs specifically. But since we only have 45 minutes, let me tell you a little bit about them. They'll introduce themselves, tell you their most underappreciated animal species, and see if you had the same answer. And then they'll get going into their presentation. But the Youth Ocean Advocates work within the New York City community to support wildlife conservation campaigns, learn how environmental policies impact communities and the health of the environment, and explore ways you can influence change as a young leader. The Youth Ocean Advocates is a program through the Wildlife Conservation Society's New York Aquarium. And today they are speaking on a topic that just like truly fascinates me to no end. I'm literally not kidding, looking at my notepad and pencil right now. But they're talking about urban environmentalism and the New York City Seascape specifically. And I saw a couple of you Brooklyn people out there and a couple of you New York community members out there watching both now live and in the future. So take note about your beautiful city and where you all come from. So without further ado, I will pass it on and they'll introduce themselves, give them a lot of love. You are not going to be disappointed by this month's webinar. So over to you guys.
Hi everyone, before we get started, we just wanted to do a quick icebreaker. What do you think the most underappreciated aquatic species is? If you can, we would love to see your answers in the chat, along with your names and where you're from. Simka, what do you think the most underappreciated aquatic species is?
Well, personally, I think the most underappreciated aquatic species is the sawfish. What do you think, Jaren?
I think the most unappreciated aquatic species is the leafy sea dragon, because no one ever heard of that name. It's a dream. What about you, Yuna?
I think that octopus are the most underrated species just because of how smart they are. What about you, Leslie-Ann?
I think the most underappreciated aquatic species is the seahorse because only males can give birth. What about you, Simone?
I think that seaweed is very unappreciated because it can sequester carbon from the atmosphere and mitigate climate change. Arya?
I think cuttlefish are really interesting just because of how smart they are and innovative. Fatima, which animal do you say is the most underrated?
Well, I think sea turtles are very cool.
That's great. Welcome to our Rise Up webinar, The Sea That Never Sleeps, Ocean Conservation in an Urban Environment. We are the Youth Ocean Advocates, and we are so excited to be talking to you today about urban environmentalism and all that you can do to address urban threats.
Now, I know Bailey already started talking about the YOAs, but we have a little more information here. So, the Youth Ocean Advocates, or YOA, is a program held by the New York Aquarium in which high school students come together to spread awareness about the threats faced by the ocean. This year, we have created social media posts to educate the public on issues such as overfishing, how improper PPE disposal impacts aquatic animals, and the local goals in environmental policy reform. Additionally, we have plans in motion to run a table at the It's My Estuary Day event in Coney Island Creek and create an event surrounding the world's oceans day. Despite the limitations of a virtual setting, we are still advocating to protect our local waters and the organisms that inhabit them. We are proud to be co-hosting this Rise Up webinar and hope that you'll be inspired to advocate for the ocean.
To start, we just wanted to give a brief introduction on how we define urban environmentalism. As proud New Yorkers, it's no surprise to us that the underwater wildlife that also calls New York City home is just as active as the sprawling metropolis situated just above it. It is important that we keep it that way, as the biodiversity of our waters helps keep our city thriving. Urban environmentalism is the effort to maintain and protect the urban environment and its functions. Even though interactions with wildlife may not be constant in our lives, our actions remain impactful on the livelihoods of the animals that live here. It is our responsibility to protect and coexist with all the biodiversity living here while still allowing our city to flourish. We have a unique arsenal of resources in our backyard, including an immense community of environmentalists and many museums, zoos, aquariums, and gardens that love to get youth involved. Whether it's through learning about our local species in order to better support them, partnering with local institutions that already have strong conservation programs in place, or making individual action a part of our daily life, we can truly make a difference and be active in conserving our concrete jungle and all that lives here. Now that we're done with the introduction, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with the New York City Seascape.
Why don't we dive right into our seascape to understand exactly what we're protecting? Did you know that humpback whales live in New York City? The New York Seascape consists of over 16,000 square miles of coastal and ocean ecosystems, acting as one of the most diverse marine habitats in the world. The seascape provides for migration routes, nurseries, and spawning areas for hundreds of species, including globally threatened animals, as well as supports New York's economy through recreational and commercial fishing, tourism, and transportation. Wildlife in the New York Seascape faces many threats, including natural resource extraction, unsustainable fishing practices, ship collisions and entanglement, pollution, and energy development. Through the New York Seascape program, the New York Aquarium is committed to protecting local populations of species through research, promoting sustainable ocean use, and advocating for community stewardship.
Now, before I recognize some of the local species that live in the seascape, I want to remind you that living in a major city that is known for its lights and buildings can allow people to look past what's right in their own backyard. Many local species in seascape consist of animals you wouldn't believe could be seen in New York, from sharks, oysters, dolphins, to life-changing corals. Unfortunately, these species still face many of the threats, including overfishing, anchor damage, and habitat changes due to climate change. However, with the help of the Seascape program, these animals are being protected with change and advocacy. One such species are corals. Deep-sea networks of corals can be found right off the coast of New York City and in underwater canyons. They are fragile and slow-growing, often taking hundreds to thousands of years to reform once broken. Threats that relate to corals are bottom fishing gear that can break and damage coral communities.
New York waterways are also home to many notable marine species. In recent years, regulations to protect fish populations have maintained food sources for predators such as whales and dolphins. The implementation of environmental legislation such as the Clean Water Act, the Marine Mammals Protection Act, and the Endangered Species Act allow for the marine mammal populations to grow by protecting their food and habitats. However, climate change has caused environmental changes in our local waterways. The warming ocean temperatures cause migration patterns to change. Currently, this is causing whales and dolphins to be more frequently spotted. Speaking of dolphins, a few weeks ago, 3 dolphins were seen in the East River. Local shark species also face many intense threats within the New York Seascape. Some shark species include sand tiger sharks, blue sharks, and short-fin mako sharks. With this variety of sharks comes the problem of overfishing. To begin with, 40% of all fish caught are captured unintentionally, and of that bycatch, 273 million sharks are accidentally caught due to ineffective fishing practices. Besides overfishing, many of these sharks are unprovoked and cause few to no attacks.
Another notable local species is the horseshoe crab. Horseshoe crabs are interesting local species that have existed for over 300 million years. In fact, Horseshoe crabs are actually more closely related to arachnids than actual crabs. Every year between May and June, female American horseshoe crabs emerge from the Atlantic Ocean onto the beaches of New York to lay their eggs. Unfortunately, horseshoe crabs face a significant threat. Their blue blood is utilized for medical purposes such as the COVID-19 vaccine. Horseshoe crabs have strong immune systems. Their blue blood is used to test for the presence of harmful bacterial endotoxins and to make safer vaccines. Currently, alternatives are being developed to replace the horseshoe crab's blood or reduce its usage for blood testing. There is hope for this threat to be eliminated.
Now, last but not least, oysters. Did you know that New York City was nicknamed the Big Oyster? In fact, New York City's harbor used to hold half the world's population of oysters. However, due to overfishing, although not the only reason, oysters have almost disappeared from the New York harbor. Thankfully, because of the Billion Oyster Project, the population is steadily rising, and many positive results have come of it. For instance, oyster reefs provide valuable ecosystem services like improving water quality, habitats for aquatic species, and protection from storms. This is especially important because New York City has 578 miles of shoreline across the 5 boroughs. And as sea levels rises and natural disasters increase in severity due to climate change, it is inevitable that the communities near the water will face devastating conditions, as they did, for example, during Hurricane Sandy. Overall, oyster reefs provide great marine habitats for fish and invertebrates, as well as being staple food to many aquatic species, which in turn results in an increase in biodiversity for New York City's waters.
There are so many different organizations in New York City that are working to protect animals in the New York Seascape and beyond. For example, the Wildlife Conservation Society is an organization that we are all involved in. The Wildlife Conservation Society saves wildlife and wild places worldwide through science, conservation actions, education, and inspiring people to value nature. They also run 5 parks in New York City that see 4 per year in a normal year.
The goal of WCS is to conserve the world's largest wild places in 14 priority regions, home to more than 50% of the world's biodiversity. Founded in 1895 as the New York Zoological Society, the Wildlife Conservation Society was one of the first conservation organizations in the United States. The society began with a clear mandate: advance wildlife conservation, promote the study of zoology, and create a first-class zoo.
The 5 parks that run through New York City are the Bronx Zoo, Central Park Zoo, Queens Zoo, Prospect Park Zoo, and the New York Aquarium. These parks act as a window to nature and help to encourage people who live in cities to connect with the ocean, animals, and conservation work. As the vets, curators, and keepers care for the animals in our 5 zoos and aquariums in New York, they share their insights with scientists working in the field to save wildlife. Field staff report back their observations of animal behavior and needs in nature, which in turn bolsters animal well-being in the parks.
The conservationists here in the New York Aquarium Conservation Program seek to protect and restore threatened species and habitats, encourage smart ocean planning to ensure a place for wildlife in our busy waters, and build ecological resilience in nearshore and river habitats. The New York Aquarium is a leading voice in local marine conservation issues, committed to preserving safe places for people and wildlife to share the waters that surround this city of islands.
Here is a current update on what the New York Aquarium is doing. Through aquatic satellite tagging and monitoring of several species of sharks and great whales in New York Seascape, they're helping to guide and inform fisheries and management policies. They're conducting long-term ecology monitoring and developing management plans for American eel and river herring as part of ongoing restoration of the Bronx River. They're helping to secure the protection of the critical habitat, including the Hudson Canyon, and underwater marine marvel that rivals and Grand Canyon in scale and majesty. It's home to an astonishing array of fish, marine mammals, invertebrates, and cold water corals. This includes the development of the first national marine sanctuary in the Mid-Atlantic, and the citizen science programs encourage the public to explore local beaches and water, contribute data to support time and biodiversity.
In order to receive AZA accreditation, zoos and aquariums must follow standards of animal welfare, care, management, veterinary care, conservation, safety, and guest services. Accredited zoos and aquariums have developed over 40 reintroduction programs for species considered threatened and endangered by the Endangered Species Act. AZA has also supported over 400 conservation projects since 1991 with grants, and has developed species survival plans and other breeding programs to bring species to healthy population levels in the wild. Zoos and aquariums spend $231 million every year in support of conservation projects. They also incite empathy in visitors by providing them with opportunities to form connections with animals and encourage visitors to live more sustainably and get involved in conservation. In this way, animals act as ambassadors for those in the wild to educate the public about the unique threats a species faces. In fact, many of the animals in zoos and aquariums are either rescued from the wild or were born in captivity and would be incapable of returning to the wild.
And it doesn't stop there. There are other great organizations in New York City that help connect people with the environment, such as the New York City's Department of Parks and Recreation, which for those of you living in New York are most likely familiar with, one of their famous parks being Central Park. Their mission is to plan resilient and sustainable parks, public spaces, and recreational activities, build a park system for present and future generations, and care for parks and public spaces for New Yorkers. So overall, not only do they give spaces for New Yorkers to take a breath of fresh air and relax away from the busy environment of the city, but they provide various recreation activities for all ages, like swimming, basketball, ice skating, you name it. And as much as we like to think the vast majority of these parks are just playgrounds and concrete, in actuality, the forested natural areas make up nearly a quarter of parklands in New York City, and they serve a vital purpose. These forests strengthen not only New York City's ecosystem, but also the health and well-being of the New Yorkers who use them for free, accessible exercise and relaxation. Anyone can join New York City's parks mission on planning strong and sustainable parks. For example, on their website, New Yorkers are able to sign up to volunteer at the many parks they have to help the environment, like volunteering to help plant trees. By planting trees and maintaining park grounds and healthy forests, we are not only creating an ambient environment for New Yorkers to engage with community members, but healthy forests also support habitats for native wildlife, such as great horned owls, downy woodpeckers, coyotes, and red-backed salamanders. And let's not forget the native wildflowers, such as the firewheel, butterfly milkweed, and the New York aster, all species that have long called New York City home. These parks and organizations are significant because they help connect people to wildlife and nature. Because even though we don't think about it, we are also a part of nature. So it's everyone's duty to play a major part in protecting the natural spaces in the urban environment for the well-being of our cities.
Here are a few ideas for how you can get involved. One way is through volunteering with environmental advocacy-based organizations. You can go to the websites of organizations mentioned or do some research to find more groups advocating for the ocean. The Youth Ocean Advocates Program is just one example. Discovery guides and other WCS-based programs are a great way to share your passion for conservation and to share your passion for conservation with zoo visitors, as well as providing you with the opportunity to create educational content for the WCS website. They're actually taking applications right now. Also, the Ocean Project website has many great opportunities for youth to get involved.
You can even form your own community of ocean advocates by starting a school environmental or ocean advocacy club, doing fundraisers, educational campaigns, hosting events, and inspiring others to get involved in the process can all have a major impact locally. Even just discussing environmental issues with your peers can help raise awareness for lesser known issues, or maybe spark ideas for how you can impact how environmentally friendly your school is. Visiting zoos and aquariums and other local organizations to learn about their current conservation initiatives is another option.
If you don't want to commit a lot of time to conservation, that's totally okay too. Writing letters and emails to your government representatives concerning environmental policies is a way to make your voice heard and have an impact on environmental justice in your own community. Tell your friends to join you and spend time together researching your local representatives. Another option for political action is doing research about different candidates with strong environmental platforms. There are a lot of local elections coming up in the next few months, including city council, mayor, and the city comptroller, all of which are positions that can make a huge impact if they're held by someone who cares strongly about environmental threats. Telling your friends and family to get out and vote for a candidate of your choice is a great way to get involved.
Individual actions are also super effective. You can find ways to reduce, reuse, or recycle your own personal waste. Disposable plastics are one important issue when it comes to waste, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Fast fashion is another problem that deeply affects our environment due to extreme water usage, the creation of waste as trends rise and fall, and the pollutants that are present in dyes and released in factory runoff, as well as the microplastics released and disposed of when you wash your clothes. Buying clothing from a company with a clear outline on what they do for the environment is one option. If that's not possible, that's completely fine. Trying to buy less clothing in general, or maybe arranging clothing swaps with your friends, are fun ways to address this important issue. Lastly, donating old clothes or handing them down to younger family members and friends are sure ways to ensure that your waste production will be reused rather than thrown away. Through creating sustainable changes in your waste production, you can share what you do with your friends and family and educate them on why it's such a big issue, and ultimately create larger community change.
Eating less meat is another individual action you can take to protect wild places. Incredible amounts of water and food go into rearing livestock, and extremely high levels of methane are produced, which contributes to the climate change crisis. You can begin your efforts by choosing a single day or even meal to go with plant-based alternatives, turning it into a habit and sharing its importance with family and friends. You can also make your diet more environmentally conscious by opting for sustainably caught seafood with the help of the Seafood Watch app. Raising awareness for all these issues is deeply important as well. One way you can participate is through attending or organizing protests to stand up for conservation-related issues. You can create artwork that conveys a powerful statement regarding conservation and share it with your community. Fundraising is another way you can help. Finding organizations you support and raising money for them through your school environmental club, or hosting an event, or running a bake sale. For your next birthday, you could ask your friends to help you raise money for an environmental charity you support rather than getting birthday presents. There are so many options for advocating as youth, and being in an urban environment, we have so many different organizations and people to share ideas with, so that only helps us more. One important takeaway is that you can incorporate conservation and environmentalism into everything you do. If you don't want a career in environmental science, that's completely fine. Wherever you wish to work, that could be an artist, a teacher, a lawyer, there are so many different ways to incorporate sustainability into your daily life.
Even if living in an urban environment means you may not have direct access to nature or wildlife in your everyday life, there are so many ways you can contribute to the conservation efforts through politics, individual action, and spreading awareness about issues people may not know about, because joining the important organizations and getting involved you can have a better idea of how to promote environmentalism in all that you do.
All of these actions you can take are indicative of how much impact a single person can have on their environment. Having an impact really isn't that difficult for urban environmentalists, as long as you keep it in the forefront of your mind and look at all of your actions critically through the lens of conservation. Additionally, part of the beauty of cities is how close together we are. We each have access to such large communities and so many people to share information with. Everyone is capable of making change in their own community, regardless of where they live. Even small contributions help to protect the environment.
We hope you found this presentation informative and empowering. Especially the week after Earth Day and the final week of Earth Month, we challenge you to introduce one sustainable change to your life. Whether that's eating less meat, organizing a clothing swap with your friend, or volunteering at your local park, there are so many ways that you, as an individual and as a part of a larger community, can make a difference. Thank you.
Clap. That was so good. Oh my gosh. I wish we were just in this huge auditorium because so many people would be just clapping and so excited. Thank you all for that wonderful presentation. It was super informative, fun to look at. And I know I'll be thinking about these topics for a while. And you all are just pros. I can see why you all were accepted to be youth ocean advocates. You are certainly youth ocean advocates to me. So let's get into questions because I want to pick all of your brains. And people, if people watching, if you do have a question either about the New York City Seascape, about the New York Aquarium, the YOA program, or just about environmentalism and taking action as a young leader in general, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box or here in the chat, and we will be sure to get to them. But my first question, and I like to ask this to everybody, is who or what encouraged you all to get involved, or what inspired you? Why do you do what you do? And anyone can go. Arya, she unmuted. Here we go.
Well, I've always been really interested in wildlife, and I think especially growing up in such a big city where you don't necessarily always have like access to seeing nature in like your daily life, it just becomes even more inspiring and interesting, and it's like something that I've always wanted to learn more about. So I think especially seeing the effects of pollution and climate change, and like for example, we had that huge protest last year where all the high school students walked out, and I think it's just having access to so many resources for advocacy while also not having that much access to nature and understanding how important it is has always inspired me.
Well, for me, my parents have gave me every experience imaginable because of my passion for ocean conservation. I've been going to camps and programs learning more about ocean conservation and marine science and all these things. And it's crazy how little people don't know about certain issues, and to be a part of a group that helps throw that knowledge around and allow people to understand more about the impact of what they do on a daily basis, it's just amazing to be a part of.
Anyone else? Who or what inspired you? You can also answer what keeps you going, because this is a really heavy movement in the sense that, you know, we're dealing with what our future looks like, and it's a future all of us will be a part of. So yeah, either who or what inspired you, or what keeps you going.
So I'll speak for the second question. So I already agree with Arya and Leslie Ann and like what inspired me, like people, like looking at people like in the New York Aquarium, seeing people so passionate and, you know, trying to make a change in this world. And what keeps me going is the fact I'm surrounded by these people. I'm just like, always in awe by my colleagues and stuff like that. And like Simone, Fatima, Yuna, Leslie-Ann, Aria, honestly, everyone, like the whole YOA. I'm just like, whoa, you guys been doing this for a long time. Because personally, I have only been doing this for like 2 summers, and I'm still got a lot to go, and I honestly can't wait because I'm always learning from the people around me, and seeing their passion motivates me to do more. Because I'm just like, you know what, I should do more. Yeah, it's truly just that. So yeah, the people around me motivates me.
I'm gonna agree with Stephanie in the chat in saying that you all inspire me. I mean, like, I feel that way about being in the same space as all of you. So I'm like super jazzed to go out tomorrow and like do something. But I agree. I think I interned in college at Shed Aquarium for 2 years, and being surrounded by people who just purely love this planet and just like have this most authentic passion for protecting it and taking care of our wild places. It's infectious. Like, you just can't help but like buy in if you haven't already bought in. And so I also credit, the aquarium that I spent a lot of my time at here in Chicago for really re-inspiring me in a lot of ways, and constantly meeting new people where I was like, wait, now I want to do this. Now I want to actually go, to the Galapagos, just these random places where, the researchers at Shed we're working at. I'm sure you all feel that way about the New York Aquarium and meeting so many cool professionals there, and the greater WCS family, learning about all the cool things that people are doing. So I know that I get inspired by that as well. Here is a question. By the way, definitely put your questions in the chat or the Q&A box for these awesome young leaders. If you are not in New York City, what other organizations can you look to in order to get involved? Who do you guys look up to outside of New York? I think Aria and both Leslie-Ann were saying New York City is such a great place because there's endless opportunities to get involved. But if you're looking for outside of New York, who do you guys look to?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Simone.
Okay, so there are so many different ways that you can get involved locally. You can check out AZA accredited zoos and aquariums near you. You can check out natural history museums. They have opportunities to volunteer or take classes. You can look at local departments of parks, and you can look at local environmental centers to volunteer or just look around and see what other people are doing.
Yeah, I think Simone basically covered it, but just to expand upon that, there's so many, especially in urban areas, one of our biggest strengths is how many people we have access to and like the community building that we can do around conservation. So even if there aren't as many opportunities to get involved in ocean conservation in your area, you can kind of create that for your own community, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people who want to get involved.
Oh, and just to add on, if there's not any local organizations, you can always, try, if you go to like regular like GoFundMe, like projects or websites, you can start one yourself. It's really easy because I know someone especially like who made a mural project for their school and they did it themselves, and she's a close friend of mine. You go and write like on a GoFundMe page, write a little blurb about it, and then gather your community members, make a local garden project. All like the ideas are endless. So if there isn't none that you can't find, make one yourself.
I'd like to add on to what all my colleagues are saying. It's amazing. But change starts with you. If you see something that there's an issue, or you like, I want to change this, I want to do something about it, you can. It's really easy. Like Jaren said, maybe starting a club in your school, or going out to your aquarium and finding out programs that you're interested in. It just takes one small step, and you can go like very far from that.
Yeah, I agree, because everyone has power in themselves. So you should believe in yourself that you have the power to make a change. Because if you because like if you take any action, who might know? Like it might end up making a good change in the world.
I love these. These are such good answers. Now I'm like, but I completely agree, right? Like if there isn't something, I always recommend looking to see who's doing what you're interested in. And if there's nobody, go forth. Like there's so many people, I'm sure once you start talking about it, so many people are going to be like, I've thought about that, but I couldn't do it alone. Boom, start it together. Those are all really, really good answers. We have a question in the chat or in the Q&A box. This is a really good question. What is something you wish adults would do to help you and give you more opportunities in this work? I know, I'm like, oh, this is such a good question.
I think that adults, like all of the opportunities that we've had have been like adults trying to like let us into spaces that were usually dominated by adults. So I think letting us be able to sit in and learn more from the people who are actually working in these careers is what will ultimately be able to help us get involved more. And I think when it comes to issues of ocean conservation, honestly, just like also doing your part to make sure that we are actively conserving the environment, because as we noted in the presentation, there are so many individual actions that people can take. And I think ultimately, like letting youth into the spaces so that they can learn and understand better, like what programs are already being instituted, and then also just doing your part.
Yeah, adding on to Aria, a lot of what my school used to tell me was, oh, you guys are the next generation. You guys are the ones who are going to be dealing with the earth. It's time to make change now. But you know, adults still have to do their part. I mean, it's not just they can't pin it on the younger generations, just as kids. So I think, while I mean, personally, the adults I worked with, I think they definitely do try and help and get me the opportunities I need to be able to interact with, you know, communities like this. But yeah, maybe just everyone has to make sure that they do their part.
Yeah, and honestly, adding on to Yuna, it's kind of like I wish more adults would like listen to us. Like there's some adults who, you know, still uses plastic bags, still leave the lights on, like, you know, do these simple things that like could help the environment. So I guess what I would ask for adults is to sit down and listen. The new generations, the young people who are, you know, wanting to make progress. So that way we can take small steps to a brighter future.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree with Jaren. Yeah, I agree with Jaren. And adding on to Jaren, I think that adults should also like support us and ask for our opinions. Like if we think, like what do we think about a specific situation, and like take ideas from us to like gather information about like what to do and what not to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good one. One I always think about is that rather than asking our advice, ask our advice and then let us help do it. You know, like let us actually like go forward with it. So yeah, that's one thing I think a lot about. We're running short on time. How fast did I tell you this would go? It zooms by. This is more just because I'm curious. What are you all thinking about doing in your future? And, you know, either how has WCS and the New York Aquarium and the programs that you all are a part of, how has that inspired that? And yeah, what are you guys doing? Because I'm like, I'm gonna hire all of them one day, or I'm gonna be coworkers, I hope, with them all one day, because you guys are just, yeah, so cool. So what are you doing?
So I'm between a lot of different careers. Right now, I'm between a career in conservation medicine or in research, but being a WCS Discover Guide and doing this YOA program has allowed me to form connections with animals, and also taught me that I want to go into a career, or at least take part in environmental education and incorporate that into whatever career path that I take.
Yeah, like Simone said, being part of WCS has given me a new perspective. I have loved marine science and marine biology ever since I was a little kid. But being in WCS, I've learned that I like making programs and having activities for visitors to do when they come to the aquarium. Like that's something I'm really interested in. And the advocacy piece is very important to me because I'm a very outspoken person. So, like, I know that I love education and love teaching kids, but it's also about like getting that message out to everyone. And I think that's where I'm going to head mostly in my career.
Yeah, kind of similarly to Leslie Ann, I've always been interested in a career in wildlife conservation. Specifically, I always wanted to do like some kind of field work and collecting research and data and things. But I think being part of WCS programs like the Discovery Guide program, we were given access to like career panels and guest speakers that exposed me to so many different careers that I just didn't know existed. So like, for example, working in environmental policy and conservation education. I think I haven't really decided yet because they all sound so interesting. But yeah, definitely still interested in doing some kind of field work and education.
So if anyone is watching, especially anyone from the New York Aquarium, we have your whole conservation team right here one day. That's amazing. That's so cool. I have to totally agree with Arya that I think I find a new job every other day that I'm like, yeah, I'll do that once, in my future. That'll be my next life, my next career. There's just, we're all really fortunate because, while we were talking a little bit earlier about how heavy I think environmental topics and kind of this work and advocating for a healthy and sustainable future can be, it's really joyful. It's just it's just a really great community to be a part of. It's a lot of hard work, but there's just so many cool things that you can do. If you want to, and if you put in the time and the energy. So yeah, I'm still finding new things. I told people that when I was in high school, that I wanted to be Bindi Irwin when I went to college, and they didn't see how that was a major. So there is plenty of potential for you all to be whatever you want to be. And I know, and I'm really thankful to have all of you alongside myself and the people watching here today, fighting and actually working towards that healthy future. So thank you all. You give me so much optimism, so much energy, so much light. You make this all worthwhile. So thank you for doing that. If you do have one, we can squeeze in one maybe little question if you are watching. But I did want to provide even more opportunities for all of you, either watching here now live or watching the broadcast later. So if you don't know how QR codes work, take your phone, act like you're taking a picture. It'll pop right up. But these are 4 things coming up kind of soonish, that if you want to get involved and take action right now, they're great opportunities for you. That first is to sign the 30 by 30 global petition to help protect 30% of our planet by 2030. If you don't know, literally Google 30 by 30. There's so many cool organizations and groups working towards this global goal and encouraging both our leaders here in the United States, but wherever you are at, to help contribute to that global goal. As we all got to put in our part for that. So sign that petition, tell your leader, wherever you are coming to us from, that this is important in protecting our planet. Both not only ensures a healthy ocean, but also a healthy climate. That second, if you are artsy, creative, if you love writing, if you love drawing, singing, painting, what have you, give the Bow Seat 2021 Ocean Awareness Contest a follow, a checkout. Their contest is open right now. They're an awesome youth organization, also on the East Coast, not in New York, however, but yeah, give them a follow, give them a checkout. and submit your work talking about water rising and ocean conservation. That third QR code is start planning for World Ocean Day. June 8th kind of seems like a far ways away, but it's not. It's coming so fast. I personally cannot wait to see what these YOAs are doing, but I can't wait to see what all of you are doing as well. You know, it's still a weird year with a pandemic, so celebrate, take action however you can, but let us know how you're doing that so we can uplift you and share that with more people in our community. And then that fourth QR code is my favorite. Learn more about the Youth Ocean Advocate Program. They are not currently accepting applications, but if you are in the New York community, check them out when they're open. Like, join these awesome young people. Like, this is, I already feel like an honorary member and I'm like loving it. By a couple of, yeah, totally an honorary member. So if you could be a real member, why wouldn't you be? So give that a check out, or you can go to the New York Aquarium's website, Google New York Aquarium Youth Ocean Advocate, it'll pop right up. Let's see if we have any final questions while we are sitting here for these awesome leaders. We don't have any final questions. So I want to thank you all so much again for your time, your energy, your work. It all makes a difference. You know, I was sitting outside today on my porch and I just could feel the good energy, and both from all of you, but you know, the work that so many other young people like yourselves are doing. I just felt like Mother Earth was like, yes, we got some good ones. We got some good ones on our team. And that's all of you. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your time, both with my community here at the Rise Up webinar, but with your New York community and hopefully new friends, as there's a lot of people watching here today. So thank you all so much. You all are amazing. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I will see you in May. Alrighty. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Great job.